Could it be? For me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the command post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your commander-in-chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So, this is a quick impromptu video. Hope you're enjoying your weekend and your bye week. I'm getting way too comfortable in these white threads. Maybe I should be comfortable, but I've been enjoying this bye week nonetheless. Hopefully, you can say the same. So, I stumbled upon this right before I was leaving the house, and I decided to throw this up, do a quick video, and talk about this. On CNN on Friday's episode, we talked about Green Bay losing, Detroit doing us a huge solid, and beating the Packers, dropping the Packers to 9-4 on the season. I went through the exercise of going through the Packers' losses. Philadelphia, twice to the Lions, once to the Vikings. Those are their 4 losses. So they've got 4 conference losses. Meanwhile, the Commanders have 5 losses on the season, but only 3 of them are within the conference: Tampa Bay, Philadelphia, Dallas. So technically speaking, if we win out in the conference, we have a chance to win a tiebreaker in a situation with Green Bay if we are to finish with the same record. Now, a lot would have to happen. We'd have to either run the table or only lose once more, and then Green Bay would have to lose twice, down the stretch. I don't see their schedule as one that they should lose more than one game. They'll probably be favored in every single game they play down the stretch, except for Minnesota in Week 18. And that's all dependent upon, when Minnesota in Week 17. And that's all dependent upon where Minnesota is in their process. Detroit might have the division locked up already, and they can't advance any higher than the 5 seed. They may not be playing all of their starters. Who knows what it looks like in Week 17, right? But they'll be favored over the Bears at home in Week 18. They'll be favored over the Saints in Week 15. They'll be favored, or 16 rather. They'll be favored more likely than not on the road at Seattle on Sunday Night Football in Week 15. So, I don't see them losing 2 more games. So we really don't have a big margin for error. That said, I saw something interesting. This is a probability chart that I saw on social media. I pulled it off, and I want to go through it with you guys. So what this essentially is the probability of where teams will ultimately end up seated in the postseason this year. These are the odds. All right, essentially. These are the percentage chance that you end up in that particular slot. So as you can see, the one in the darkest green, right, the brightest green, is the one that is the highest percent chance of you finishing at that particular spot. So obviously there are only 7 spots in the postseason, so hence you're only going to see 7 really bright chances. But that said, as you can see, Detroit's best shot of any of the slots is the number 1 seed. They started off 12-1. They're in the driver's seat, essentially. Even with a loss to, say, Buffalo next week, they would still have a better conference record, as both of Philadelphia's losses this season have come to NFC opponents. So they're sitting in a really good spot. If they could take care of Buffalo next week at home, they're sitting pretty. Not that they are guaranteed to run the table. They still have games at Chicago, at San Francisco, and then they finish up at home versus Minnesota. But they're in a pretty good, spot if they, find a way to beat Buffalo, next week. So they've got essentially an 80% chance of being the number 1 seed. No one has better odds of finding themselves in that number 1 spot. The Eagles have a 15% chance of getting the number 1 seed. But more importantly for them, they are all but a cinch for the number 2 seed. And we talked about this already. There are no other division winners within shouting distance of the Lions and Eagles. Everyone else, the South and the West, the Seahawks are 7-5. The South division leader right now are the Falcons at 6-6. I mean, nobody's even remotely close. So the Eagles and the Lions have a stranglehold on the 1 and 2 seeds, essentially. It's not a matter of where those 2 are going to finish. It's where they're going to finish, whether it's 1 or 2. But it's not a matter of whether there'll be 3 or 4 or anything like that. Nobody's catching those 2. So the Eagles right now have the best odds, the best chance at being the 2 seed at 82%. They're again, they're going to either be the 1 seed or the 2 seed. Same thing can be said for Detroit. Then you get to the Minnesota Vikings. They still have a 5% chance of being the number 1 seed. They'd have to win the division And they probably, my guess would be, because their two losses were to the Rams and to the Lions. So my guess is they'd probably need a little help. They probably not only need to have Detroit lose two games, one of them to Detroit, right? I mean, to Minnesota. They'd have to beat Minnesota, or beat Detroit, excuse me, in that final game of the season. They'd also need them to lose Buffalo, whomever, right? And finish with a better record. And then they'd also need Philadelphia to lose a game, is my guess. I don't think them finishing tied with Philadelphia puts them ahead of the Eagles. As you can see, the Eagles just have a better shot at the 15%. So my guess is Minnesota would need to finish with a better record than Philadelphia. They can't finish tied with them. Same could be said with Detroit. They need to finish with a better record than them, not tied. But they still have an outside shot of getting the one seed. They have a 2% chance of getting the two seed. Again, highly unlikely. Then there's the matter of where they are now, which is where they're probably going to end up finishing, which is the 5 seed. They're 60% at 59.5. That's probably where they're going to end up. They could, in a crazy scenario, end up with the 6 seed. Obviously, Green Bay losing yesterday hurts their chances of leapfrogging the Vikings. But anything could happen. The Vikings could lose to the Falcons on Sunday, and then that loss doesn't hurt Green Bay as much in terms of trying to move up to the 5 seed. But if they win against the Falcons at home on Sunday in Week 14, they would have created enough distance to feel really comfortable that they're going to either finish with the 1 or 2 seed. Highly unlikely that it's the 2 seed. It's either the 1 seed or it could be the 2 seed. I take that back, because if they somehow win the division, the Eagles probably are going to end up with the 1 seed at that point. So the likelihood is they're going to be that 5 seed. But if they lose on Sunday to the Falcons, now you kind of come closer back to the pack. You put yourself in a position where the loss for the Green Bay Packers doesn't hurt them as much. They're still within a game. And so a lot of things change if they don't win. But right now, they're kind of set at the number 5 seed. And 26% they could be the 6th seed. Again, a win on Sunday, and I think that number decreases and the number at 5 increases. So would the numbers at 1 and 2 for them increase with a win on Sunday. And then they have a 7.2% chance of falling back to number 7. They'd have to implode to do that. They'd have to implode, and the teams behind them, Green Bay and Washington in particular, would have to be outstanding in that same space. So highly unlikely. The Vikings are probably going to be your 5 seed, right? And then there's the matter of the Commanders, which is what we really care about. So right now they have a less than 1% chance of getting the number 1 seed. That's out of any of our thoughts at this point. We were talking reckless about that at 7-2. That 3-game losing streak pretty much put that to bed. And so that's a dead thing. The 2 seed, they have a 2.3% chance of getting. They're not getting the 2 seed. Either you'd have to win out and you need a ton of help in order to achieve that as well. The 3 seed, you're not going to be that, because the winner of the NFC East or the NFC North is going to be the 1 or the 2 seed, which is why you don't see Minnesota with any percentages there. You don't see Washington with really any percentages there at 3 or 4, because if you win the NFC North or NFC East, you're going to be either the 1 or the 2 seed. I've already told you why, because in no outcome will you win the division and have a worse record than the NFC North or South or West winner, right? So the likelihood, like, Philadelphia isn't going to lose every game left on the schedule. That's what it would take for Washington to win the division and still finish worse than Tampa Bay, right? Not happening. So while Washington has a 0.1% chance as a 3, they're not going to be the 3 seed. If you win the division, you're going to be the 1 or the 2 seed, right? Which they're not going to do. They don't have a chance to be the 4 seed, because the NFC, South is at 6-6 right now. And in order to win our division, you'd probably have to finish with, my guess is probably 12 wins. They can't get to 12. You'd have to finish with 11 wins, excuse me. We'd have to finish a game better than Philadelphia, at least. And the NFC South winner, because They're 6-6. I guess theoretically they could win their final 5 games and get to 11 wins. But the likelihood of that happening is slim and none. And in order to win our division, you probably gonna have to win 12 games. They can't get to 12 anymore. So the 4 seed is out of play for the Commanders, which is fine, right? The 5 seed, it's a really long shot at this point because of how well Minnesota has played. They're currently 10-2, have a chance at home against a struggling Vikings team, struggling Falcons team to get to 11-2. You're not catching up to Minnesota. That loss against Dallas crippled any opportunity to really advance within the structure of the division, but more importantly, within the structure of the wild card. We really needed to win that game against Dallas. That one hurt. So 3.7% chance of catching Minnesota, probably not going to happen, right? Now you have a much more realistic shot of catching Green Bay, but it's still 24%. So you've got essentially a quarter of a shot to catch Green Bay at the 6th seed. Now we got some help from Detroit on Thursday, so that was good, and that heightens our chances. But it's still a lot of work on our part. You're going to still need Green Bay to lose a game or two. Right now, you just need them to lose one more game, but in that scenario, we'd have to win out. You really need Green Bay to lose 2 more games because that would allow you the space to lose 1 game, but still finish better than them, or still finish tied with them. And if because both Green Bay and Washington finish out the season with all NFC opponents, any losses by either one of them would be charged to their conference record and charged to their conference loss record. And that's where Green Bay can't afford to lose because they've already lost all 4 of their games this season to conference opponents, whereas the Commanders have only lost 3 of their 5 losses to conference opponents. So they are in the lead there as of right now. But again, they would need to finish at least tied with Green Bay. So that would force Green Bay to have to lose 2 more games if Washington is to lose 1. If Washington loses no more games, Green Bay loses 1 more game, that would get Washington to the 6th seed. But again, a lot would have to happen for that to happen. Washington just needs to take care of business, is what that means. And then 52% at the 7th seed, which is where we more likely than not will end up when this thing is all said and done. That Dallas loss, as I continue to talk about, really put us in this position. It probably would be flipped, and we would be at 52% or maybe like 47 or maybe 42% at the 6th seed. We would be the 6th seed right now if we didn't lose to Dallas. We would be the 6th seed right now, and you would have a commanding lead over Green Bay because you would only have 2 conference losses, not 3, had you beaten Dallas like you were supposed to. And you'd be tied with Green Bay right now at 9-4, and you would have a much better shot at the 5 seed at that point, and you'd still be within striking range of the division because you would literally just be a game back. You'd be at this point a game and a half back of Philadelphia, but with them still having a game against Pittsburgh and still having to play us, you still would be right in the mix in the division, but that's not the case because you did lose to Dallas. So we are more likely than not going to be in this 7th slot. But again, all we can do is take it one at a time, right? We can't control what Green Bay does. We can't control if they're going to go on the road and beat Seattle. We can't control if they're going to go home and take care of business against New Orleans. We can't control the following week if they're going to go to Minnesota and win that game. We can't control in week 18 when Chicago has nothing to play for under an interim head coach if the Bears are going to go in there and try to spoil the Packers season on the way out like the Packers did them last year. We don't control any of that. But what we do control is what we do. We do control what we do against New Orleans in week 15 off the bye. We do control what we do the following week against Philadelphia at home. We do control what we do the following week after that against Atlanta. And we do control what we do against Dallas in week 18 on the road against the Cowboys. We do control those things. So control what you can control, right? That's the name of the game. Control what you can control. We can control what we do and just let the chips fall where they may. We got to take care of business, though. It starts with us. So the likelihood is we finish up 3-1 down the stretch. Or if you want to count the Titans game, we finish up winners of 4 out of our final 5. That's the likelihood. That's not a guarantee, right? My guess is we drop one of these games. Who knows to who, right? I'm not going to just assume Philadelphia is the one because it doesn't have to be them. But that's what it feels like. But why can't we run the table, right? That's not out of the realm of possibility. I like our chances against Philadelphia the second time around. I told you that as soon as we played them. And nothing has changed since we played them. If anything that has changed, Jaden Daniels is much healthier, and we should be, theoretically speaking, should be much healthier. And we should have Marshawn Lattimore. Should, because we don't know what's going to happen between now and Philadelphia's game. But all we can do is control what we can control. So that's that. Nobody has a higher percentage chance of being a 5 seed or the 7 seed, excuse me. And we have the 3rd best percentage chance of being the 6 seed, behind obviously Green Bay, who owns the 6 seed right now at 47%. And in Minnesota, if they don't end up with the 5 seed, they have a 26% chance of being the 6 seed. We have a 24% chance of being the 6 seed. So we're not that far behind Minnesota. So we're either going to be the 7 seed or the 6 seed. We're not getting up to 5, and we're not getting up to 1 or 2. So just wanted to share that with you. I thought it was an interesting chart there. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the team does coming out of the bye week. But again, we talked about rooting interest for the weekend. All right, we already took down one team that we needed to lose in Green Bay. Check. You should be rooting for the Vikings to beat the Atlanta Falcons. You should be rooting for the Raiders to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, although that's probably not going to happen. The one that you really should be rooting for, or the two in particular that you should really be rooting hard for after the Packers loss, are the Vikings to take care of the Falcons and the Bills to take care of the Rams. Those are the two that feel most tangible. And then somebody else brought something to my attention that was a good point. The Jets are playing the Dolphins, I believe. Really don't have a rooting interest, but they said, hey, that Dolphins pick is ours. And the more they lose, the better the pick it is for us. Touche. So, yeah, you should be rooting for the Jets to beat the Dolphins. Highly unlikely that that takes place, but much like the Buccaneers and the Raiders, doesn't matter. You know who you're supposed to be rooting for. So just do it. All right? Just do it. Like Nike. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on this impromptu command post episode. I appreciate you guys giving me a little bit of your time here on the weekend. Didn't mean to, intrude. Go back to whatever it was you were doing before I rudely interrupted. Enjoy the bye week, as I've said to you many a time, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.
LouieTeeNetwork.